This is it, the number one episode of the Couple Money Podcast. By far, this has been the most popular and downloaded show. Can you guess what it is? On a podcast about family and finances, this is perhaps one of the trickiest and most stressful questions you two may have to answer. Should we lend money to our family? I don't think it's about trying to keep the money for yourselves. Most of us would gladly help out a loved one. The hard part is when someone dear to us is constantly having problems with their finances, and our gut is wondering if we're really helping them out or if we're enabling them. Dorothea Kelly, founder and author of Money Chat, was my special guest, and we had a really open discussion on how to help relatives. We also get into finding boundaries within your marriage because nothing can cause tension between you two like your family. If you two are struggling with this, I hope this show helps.
Welcome to the Couple Money Podcast, where we discuss building up your marriage and your net worth. Here's your host, Elle Martinez.
Thanks for joining me on another episode of the Couple Money Podcast. While we've discussed tricky situations when it comes to money and marriage, I think today's topic is one of the toughest, bailing out family. I think most people would do anything to help out a relative who's hit a bump in the road. Part of it is because we love them, and also because we've all been there. However, there are times where certain family members seem to constantly struggle, and it's not always because of external circumstances, and this can be a huge strain on your marriage. In this episode, we talk about how to figure out if bailing your family is helping them or enabling them. We're going to find out how to define your line as a couple with financial coach Dorothea Connor. And finally, how you can support your family without harming your marriage or finances. I want to make sure that you have the tools and perspectives to help you find a system that works for both of you. While you and your spouse may have the very best intentions when it comes to bailing out relatives, it can sometimes be a fuzzy line between helping them and enabling them. Too many times our emotions cloud our judgment and we ignore signs that things won't get better even if the money is loaned. One of the best defenses you have, believe it or not, is your spouse. They can offer an outside perspective, and they are more than likely to make sure that your immediate family's financial needs don't suffer. However, too many times, the first person we should consult is the one we avoid. Here are a few reasons why. It'll put a strain on your own finances. Are you two truly in a financial position to help out? Your partner will probably be looking at the numbers more objectively. It'll put a strain on your marriage. Have you two been working hard at getting out of debt, taking on side jobs or extra projects? Have you cut down on your family spending to build your debt snowball? How would your family feel if their hard-earned money is being used to bail out your family? Will it start a fight? It's not really an emergency. Admit it. Even though you feel bad and you want to help out, in your heart you know it's not truly an emergency with your relative. He or she always calls when they have no other option, which seems to be the same time every month or so. Family screwed up big time. It really is an emergency, and your relative has really messed up with their finances. They refinanced that house a few times, and they're underwater, and they really need help to make the mortgage this month. But when you know their finances, you understand that that's only delaying the inevitable. As you can probably guess from the scenarios I listed, most couples avoid chatting about loaning money to family because they're fairly certain that their spouse will be skeptical and or say no to the loan. But that's okay. In fact, hearing no may be the best thing for you and your marriage. Ask your husband or wife to explain why they feel the way they do. You may find they're not really being stingy with your relatives. They are putting you and your family's well-being first. But you may still feel bad. Since this is such a delicate situation, you may want to step back and try to see it from your spouse's perspective. Ask yourself, Are you your relative's emergency fund? Have you noticed that they constantly go to you to get financial help? If so, then you're their line of credit. You should examine if they're having emergencies or if it really is just bad money management. Do you have an emergency fund? If you can't take care of yourself, then bailing out relatives can put you in a very dangerous position. Can you really afford to help them? You may have some savings tucked away, but can you afford never to see that money again? Do you need it for an upcoming expense? Perhaps you're having a baby on the way, or you want to have a buffer in case one of you loses a job. Make sure that you keep communicating with your spouse. Be honest with how you feel. This is a priority because no matter what you decide with your relatives, you two will have to get through this together. But just how do you define the line of when to say yes and when to say no? Coming up, we'll find out exactly how to have that discussion with your spouse, and then we'll look at alternatives to loaning money to relatives. Today's guest is Dorothea Connor, founder of Money Chat and president of Connor Financial Coaching. She's been featured in various national media, including Black Enterprise, U.S. News, and NerdWallet. It was because of a lively money chat she hosted on Loaning to Family recently that I wanted to have her on the show. When we got together, I knew she would not only have stories about what couples face when it comes to loaning or not loaning to family, but she'd also have some practical advice on how to deal with those situations. We started off our discussion with some typical scenarios that she's seen as a financial coach.
There are so many. Some of the major ones, I'll say, family members need someone to co-sign a car or a personal loan. And then when they default, of course, the creditors are coming after the co-signer, which may be the spouse. So you get into a couple of things, especially if the spouse has not told the other. So sometimes because you're dealing with family, people try to hide things, So that's one thing, or agreeing to support business startups. Somebody comes and says, okay, I just need $2,000 from every family member, and then maybe that person doesn't want to go to their spouse with that, and they don't notify them, or the spouse doesn't agree, and so that causes an argument. Parents, paying parents' mortgages, car notes, other large bills. The parents, sometimes, with the parents, it's kind of like, you want to take care of mom and dad, but if mom and dad are in retirement and they're living like they're still working full-time jobs, you have to sometimes sit mom and dad down, but then you get that, well, I took care of all of you children. We took care of you all, so, and for a husband or a wife coming into that situation, or for a mate, it's like, listen, we have our kids to take care of. We have our own bills. Even if you have disposable income, you have goals that you want to reach, together without spending all this extra money.
For some of you, these situations may sound familiar. By my reaction, I'm sure some of you have probably guessed I've been there myself too. Of course, when we make these decisions to help out our loved ones, there are others involved, namely our spouse. And many times, they do have something to say about it.
I have had in my practice and with friends who have gotten married, and they'll say, you know what, he gives a lot of money to his family, and they will have a problem with it. Then you hear men say all the time, she expects us to support her mother, her sister, her brother who's, 28 and won't ever get a job. So I think it's about the family dynamic. I think that it's the personality, and the family culture, how you grew up. If you've grown up and it's been that kind of, well, this is family, this is family, this is family. Sometimes you have to draw a line, and that other mate will be the one that says, you know what, this does not look right, and this is not how I want our family finances, to be spent.
I don't think anyone goes into this situation wanting to hide things from their husband or wife, but it does happen with some couples. I asked Dorothea for her thoughts on how this can impact a marriage.
I will say, and I kind of alluded to this before, it almost always seems to be that they loaned money without telling the other, because maybe this is a point of contention anyway, and they know that the spouse won't agree with loaning the money, but then the spouse finds out. So then that only causes a problem in your own household. And why do that? So here's that is what I would say would be the big thing. So you have that scenario where they didn't tell you that they were loaning the money to the family member. But then you have the scenario when the money does not get paid back. So even if, say, both husband and wife agree to loan the money, then the money does not get paid back. So then that causes an argument in and of itself. Because maybe the other person says, well, you just saw them yesterday. Did you ask for the money? And they're badgering you about, well, you're not saying anything about the money they owe us. Why aren't you mentioning it? But we all know that when you're at family gatherings or everybody's just visiting mom, you cause a family argument if you're like, hey, what about that money we loaned you? And then everybody's like, So it's kind of, it's a tricky situation, especially when you don't get paid back. And then how about this? You don't get paid back, but then your mate comes to you again and says, you know what? They need to borrow money again. I would say that those are kind of the main scenarios that I see and that I hear about all the time.
How would you feel in that situation, both as the loaner or as the spouse? Neither one seemed to be a good spot to be in. But that's what can happen when you loan money to family without having a plan as a couple. So just how do you start that discussion with your husband or wife?
This is what I would tell them to do. You know what? You have to have a heart-to-heart, a serious conversation without yelling, without raising your voice, and say, listen, you can't keep anything from me, especially not about our finances. We are our strongest ally. So you and I are a team. Don't keep something from me just because you think I will disagree. If I disagree, then we don't move forward. And the same thing with you. If you disagree with the decision I want to make regarding our finances or loaning money, we won't make that decision until we both agree. And just let them know how you feel about that. Now, both people have to be on the same page with that, agree to that. And then they can move forward, because you are essentially letting someone else come in and cause strife in your own relationship and your own family. And it's really just not worth that.
That's something you have to keep in mind. As much as you love your relatives, you are now in a family where both of you have a say in your money. You're drawing from one pot, so to speak. So it really is a matter of trust and respect that you both agree when it comes to bailing out loved ones. Something else you may not have realized is that your spouse may be able to help you see clearly whether or not you're truly helping someone or you're enabling them. But how do you draw the line?
Listen, let me tell you, you have to just kind of step back and look at the situation. How many times have you loaned them money? How many times have they paid it back? Then you think about that. But then the other thing is, what are they doing to change their situation? Now, we're talking about able-bodied people who can get a job, whatever the job may be. It doesn't have to be the best, but it can be good enough so that you're able to take care of yourself. How is that person handling their money? And how are they trying to improve their situation? And when they come to you, do they just expect to get it? Because to me, if you're constantly loaning money to the same person over and over and over again, you are enabling them. Even if they pay you back, what are they doing to get in the same situation over and over again? Because we've all been there. It's like, okay, I help you once. Okay, fine. Here, I help you again. And then it becomes a pattern. Well, you're just using me as your fallback plan. You need another fallback plan. Gotcha. So I think people, it's family. So you kind of get into that heartstring, but you're not helping them by constantly loaning them money. Because why aren't they cutting back their spending? Why aren't you cutting back? What do you need to do to scale back so that you don't have to borrow money so much? Because I am not against loaning money. I'm not against helping family members. I have needed help. I have helped other people. We've all been there, and I love helping people, but I do not want to help people that are not even trying to help themselves, because I am enabling them at that point.
One option that some families take when loaning out money is having a contract written up between the two parties, and it includes the loan amount and when it should be repaid. I see it as a way to make things clear and to get both parties on the same page. If I'm loaning out money, I want to be paid back in a reasonable amount of time. But I know everyone is different, and what works for some families might not work for others. So I ran the idea by Dorothea. She offered some great perspectives on them.
If my aunt comes to me and she has never borrowed money from me before and she says she needs it, she gets it, no questions asked. Now, if someone else comes to me, and they have borrowed money before but were kind of sketchy and paid it back later in pieces, they would get a written contract, possibly. Mm-hmm. That is if I decided to loan it, because at that point, if you feel, to be honest, because they don't have to keep the contract, right? So if you feel like they need a contract, you probably don't need to loan them the money.
Even though I'd still use contracts in certain situations, I think it's a good point to review why you feel like you need a contract. If your gut is saying that you have doubts of being paid back, maybe it's better not to loan them the money in the first place. Before we wrap things up, I wanted to see if Dorothea had a final tip to offer.
Number one, I'd like to tell couples to do what works for them as far as joining their money together. There's a lot of ideas, and if you don't do it this way, then you're not really united. I don't want couples to get caught up in that. You have to do what fits both of your personalities and works for you and keeps the arguments down. That said, it is definitely important to be on the same page and to grow your money together. Use whatever apps you need to use. Everything's online and on your phone, so it's easy. To me, it's so much easier now to manage your money together. But just get on the same page. Listen to each other. It's important that you listen to each other and understand what makes each other tick when it comes to finances. And don't discount it just because you don't understand it. Take it to heart.
I'm so glad Dorothea took the time to be on the show. If you're like me and you'd like to hear more from her, please check out the site, themoneychat.com. She also has her Money Chat book coming out next month, which will be packed with a ton of practical information you can use to build your wealth. If you sign up for her book launch list, you'll be entered to win a $25 Amazon gift card. I know it can be hard to deal with your relatives, especially if it's your parents or your siblings. But as a married couple, the two of you both have a say in how your immediate family's money is spent. When you're being approached by family to lend money, be upfront and tell them that you need to run it by your husband or wife first. Don't let them pressure you, even if they say it's an emergency. Let them know you will get back to them as soon as you can, but you need some time to run the numbers. Any reasonable person will understand, and those who love you will not want to stress out your family. If they balk and try to make you feel guilty, then you know what they're really interested in. Now let's say that you want to help, but you don't think a loan is the way to go. Perhaps you think the amount is too much, or you think that bailing them out with money is only going to make it worse. What do you do then? Here are some suggestions that may work for you guys. Give a smaller gift instead of a loan. After you sit down and come up with an amount that you're both happy with, go to your relative and tell them that you can offer a gift. Make sure the amount doesn't damage your family budget and don't have any expectation of seeing that money again. Address the problem directly. Perhaps giving cash will only mask the problem, so you may want to give a gift card for their specific need. Offer to help with budgeting. You don't have to look at their numbers, but perhaps you can share your budget spreadsheet or any apps and tools that you're using to help them get their finances squared away. Encouragement. Congratulate them when they take steps towards their goals. And finally, just say no. It can be hard to do, but sometimes it really is the best way to wake them up to their financial problem. Most of the time, with the exception of the last one, the recipient will at least be cordial, even if they're upset. That's because even though you're not giving them what they want, you are offering to assist. I've had family complain more when I said no, but only one gave me the silent treatment, and it was for a limited time. The important thing is that you and your spouse are on the same page and comfortable with the plan. Thank you so much for listening. If you have any stories about loaning or helping out family members that you want to share, leave it on the site. That's couplemoneypodcast.com. You can also leave your story on the podcast hotline. That number is area code 919-521-8770. Your story can help others navigate this very tricky situation. Remember, subscribing to the podcast is free and easy, plus you get the newest episodes as they're released. We're available on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Stitcher. We also have the feed available on the site, so you can grab it on whatever service and device you prefer. If you've enjoyed this show, or any other one, could you take a minute and leave a review on iTunes or whatever service you're using? I'd really appreciate it, and it would get the word out on the show. Please join me next week for a very special episode, Giving More in 2015 and Beyond. I'd love to have you be a part of the show, so please send in your giving story. Tell me what causes and charities matter most to you and why. I hope you have a great day, and take care.